Hi guys, welcome to EduKingdom College's Selective Preparation Power Reading Test 40 revision. Today, we have 6 questions about Pablo Neruda's Sonnet 4, titled Morning. We will begin by reading through this together, and then we will go through the questions. Let's begin reading together. You will remember that leaping stream, where sweet aromas rose and trembled, and sometimes a bird wearing water and slowness its winter's feather. You'll remember those gifts from the earth, inedible scents, gold clay, weeds in the thicket and crazy roots, magical thorns like swords. You'll remember the bouquet you picked, shadows and silent water, bouquet like a foam-covered stone. That time was like never and like always, so we go there. When nothing is waiting, we find everything waiting there. Let's look at question 1 first. Question 1 reads, how would you describe the tone of the poem? Let's quickly revise what this word tone means. Remember that tone refers to how a text feels and sounds. So think of, similarly, the tone of my voice. A reads somber and reflective. B reads warm and reflective. C reads contemplative. And D reads none of the above. Now, there are 2 things that suggest the tone of a poem. The first is the title of the poem. 2 is the connotation of the words within the poem itself. Remember that connotation is word association. Let's go back quickly to the poem and check these 2 things. Remember here, that morning is the title. And for the connotation, let's think of words that are similar to morning or have the same effect. Morning is something that is bright, warm, sunny. So let's think of words that are similar to that. Here we have the word gold. We also have more words here, like bouquet, which similarly evoke the same warming effect, because a bouquet is typically a gift you give to someone. So now that we know these 2 things, we know that the answer is B because of this part. Warm. Let's check the second part just to make sure. Reflective. Let's look at language that is reflective here. This has already been identified for us in line 5 in You Will Remember, as that is very reflective. Now, let's move on to question 2. Now that we know that question 1, the answer is B. Okay. Question 2 reads, who is the you the poet is referring to? A reads their loved one, B reads their friend, C reads the reader, and D reads the protagonist. Let's quickly look over where you is in the poem. We see this again in line 5. We see this in line 1, line 9, and again in line 9. Let's look at line 9 first. You'll remember the bouquet you picked. So who is this you that Pablo is referring to? Remember, you is second person language, so automatically the answer cannot be D, the protagonist. The answer cannot also not be C, the reader, because he is unlikely to be referring to us since he is not trying to evoke these memories in us, which we might not have. So we have 2 possible answers left. A, their loved one, or B, a friend. And if you remember that line we just read about the bouquet, it is unlikely that you give it to your friend as opposed to their loved one. So we can assume that the answer will be A, their loved one. Let's move on to question 3. Question 3 reads, what is the effect of the poet repeating the phrase, you will remember? A reads, to connect the poem with you. Remember that you was their loved one. B reads, the poet is invoking happy memories. C reads, because that time is unforgettable and permanently inscribed upon the memory. And D reads, all of the above. Don't automatically pick D, all of the above, just because that's a possible answer. Let's double check first. A, to connect the poem with you, is Correct. Remember, he is trying to think of the loved person that he is referring to. B, the poet is invoking happy memories. Let's go back to the poem and try finding these possible happy memories. You can see this again in you'll remember those gifts from the earth and the bouquet, which are positive, happy, warm memories. So yes, B is also correct. C, because that time is unforgettable and permanently inscribed upon the memory, this is suggested in the you will remember. So C is also correct, which means our answer must be D, all of the above. Let's move on to question 4. Question 4 reads, what is the effect of the line shadows and silent water? A reads, it creates a dreamlike atmosphere of peace and tranquility. B, it invokes a soft and eerie atmosphere. C, it creates a somber mood. Or D, it reflects the poet's mind. Before we go through the answers, let's break down what is happening in this line. What is the technique here? We can identify this in the repetition of the S letter, which is alliteration. But remember, this is a special type of alliteration, also called sibilance. Sibilance is the alliteration of the S letter. So here it's in shadows and silent. What else is happening in here? What are other techniques we can see? We can see imagery, as this invokes an image in our head. And this is how we're going to think of the answer. What kind of image is being put in our head? It is unlikely it'll be D, it reflects the poet's mind. B, it invokes a dark and eerie atmosphere. The words shadows and silent can suggest this, but if you go back up to the line of where this line is from in the poem, where it says, you remember the bouquet you picked, shadows and silent water, bouquet like a foam-covered stone, it is unlikely here that the warm tone has been changed suddenly into a dark and eerie atmosphere. So we can cross out C as well, which means that it will be a dreamlike atmosphere of peace and tranquility. This is suggested again in sibilance. Since sibilance is a poetry technique you use, usually suggesting peace and tranquility. Question 5 reads, what is a foam-covered stone? This, like the previous question, is imagery. Let's read through the questions together. A reads, a stone covered in moss. B, a stone in a running river. C, a stone in an embankment. And D, none of the above. So we have to think about the image that is being put into our head through this line. Let's go through bottom to top again. It is unlikely to be D, none of the above, but we'll double check through the answers. C, a stone in an embankment. It is unlikely to be an embankment because this would suggest that the stone is in stationary water. So it is unlikely to be C, because if you think about what the imagery of a foam-covered stone is, think like the beach, how the waves have that foam because they are running. That means we can also cross out A. The foam-covered stone is not likely to be covered in moss, just because that is not the imagery that we think of or that is invoked. So it must be running river. Think like, again, that wave analogy I created. So the answer is B. Finally, we'll go through question 6. The last 3 lines of the poem is an example of. Let's go back to the last 3 lines of the poem. The last 3 poem lines read, that time was like never and like always, so we go there where nothing is waiting, we find everything waiting there. Let's go from the bottom to the top, or let's do the techniques that you guys are probably familiar with first. Let's do a simile. Remember, a simile is a comparison using like or as. In this 3 lines, we can see like used twice, like never, and also like always. But here, they are not using like to compare anything, so it cannot be D. Let's do A, another technique you guys are probably familiar with. Repetition. They did, again, like I said, repeat like, but that is not enough here to be repetition, and they do not repeat anything else. So it is unlikely to be A, repetition. So it must be B, a contradiction, or C, a paradox. So what is a paradox and how is it different from a contradiction? A paradox is when something contradicts something, but usually they do this because it has a deeper meaning. So the contradiction we see is in the second and last line. So we go there where nothing is waiting, we find everything waiting there. So the idea of nothing and then everything. So it is a contradiction, but here we're going to put in C, because it has that deeper meaning that you expect nothing and then suddenly you'll have something else juxtaposing. So that's how we get the answer C. Thanks for coming to EduKingdom College's Selective Preparation Power Reading Test 40 revision. Thank you guys.